Welcome to day 3 of the Advent Stitch Along. Today and for many days to come, we'll be working on our graphs. To keep things feeling manageable, we're going to complete the left hill in 2 days and the right hill in 2 days. If you're in a groove and want to keep going at the end of today, please feel free to. Keep in mind, I won't cover stitching the sheep's legs until our day 4 video. Continuing to use our 6 strands and size 22 Chanel needle, we're going to grab an arm length of 33.62 and start stitching our hills. Our hill uses a stitch called a loopy stitch, and I like to combine this loopy stitch with a seed stitch. This is what will help get that natural looking grasses nice and fluffy. The stitch might feel a little unnatural at first, and you might feel like you aren't doing it correctly, but it's one of those moments where you have to trust the process. Now let's get started. Now, when we first prepared our hoop, our line right here did not go all the way to the edge, but we are going to try and bring our needle as close to the edge as we possibly can. The reason why I didn't have the line go that way is I didn't want it to possibly show up at the end result. So I'm going to bring my needle up here and it's going to go right there at that black line. If your needle goes further over to the left, then feel free to follow that. So I'm going to go ahead and bring my needle up, and I'm going to essentially make a back stitch right now, but I'm going to not bring it down all the way. So this is about the size of my stitch. It's a little bit bigger than a normal back stitch because we want our grass to be long feeling. And I'm going to pull this down. Now I'm going to leave it about like that rather than this, if you see the difference. So that's pulled fully. This is a little more loopy, and that's what makes it a loopy stitch. Now we're just going to keep doing that over and over and over again in a semi-random pattern. What I like to do is to always cover either my starting hole, which is right here, or my ending hole. That way it keeps my stitches nice and close together, and I'm always making sure they're nice and compact so that I'm covering all the fabric underneath. So I'm going to go right here, and I'm going to cover that stitch. And you do want to try and keep these stitches to be a little more vertical or diagonal, but not so much horizontal, because grass is not naturally horizontal. So now I'm going to come over here. I'm going to cover this bottom hole. And if I pulled maybe just a little too tight right there, I can use my needle and pull that up just a little bit. Now you will find a good rhythm with this, but you want to make sure you don't necessarily find so much of a pattern, because if you find a pattern, you're going to see that pattern in the grass. So it would be natural for me to want to go right here again and do the exact same again and again, but then my grass will end up looking too unnatural. So I'm going to come here and cover my top hole. Now feel free, if you wanted, you could cross over a piece of grass and that would be fine. The trickiest parts of this is where the grass meets the top line, because you can pretty much only go straight into it. You can do a little bit of a sideways stitch, but that part will feel a little bit harder. But as you get going, you'll figure it out. So I'm going to cover this hole down here. Again, just keep moving. Oop, lost my floss. Now we are going to go as far as about halfway through the hill, and you get to make that determination. If you feel like about here is the halfway mark, that's good. Just know that you're splitting this up in 2 days, so whatever you don't finish today, you'll finish tomorrow. And I would suggest you work in an orderly fashion. So you don't want to start here and then all of a sudden go over here and then over here. I'm going to probably move down a little and I might come back up to fill in this area, or I could go all the way down and just kind of fill it in like a circle almost. And feel free, as I just got here and I kind of cross over a little bit of grass, you can move that bottom portion there kind of under your floss a little bit. So let me show you, for example, if I was to come up right here and I wanted my stitch to be longer than going only here, you can slip it under this floss right here and pull it down. All right, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to record this and I'm just going to fast forward it. If you feel like you don't understand the stitch quite yet, just watch for a little bit longer. You can always slow down in the YouTube speed option. So if you want to see it at a little bit of a slower pace, you can do that. But take your time to learn the stitch. Trust the process and don't get overwhelmed if you look at it and you think that looks really strange. Because if you look at just this right now, it looks a little strange. But again, trusting the process, you'll be able to see by the time we're done with the hill, like, oh, that really does look like grass. A quick thing I wanted to make note of that I didn't think about until after I was done stitching was that when you are stitching this hill here on the left, I feel like I briefly mentioned it as I first started stitching, but every stitch you make, you are bringing your needle as close to this wooden hoop as possible. So if I turn mine over, you'll see just how close it is to that inside hoop. Like that's how far I'm going. I am bringing my needle up to the point that as close as I can. So that's just one thing to note about how we're finding like where this line is, this invisible line is. We're just going as close as we can. So you see like over here, this is where the line's going to be. Over here, that's where the line's going to be. And then the other thing I want to mention is this is the first time with our stitching that we are having to make sure that we cover up our tracing line, because remember, this ink will not go away. It's not like our Pilot friction pen that's going to erase with heat. So we need to make sure we're stitching over the lines. So I think the only place this is really quote an issue is kind of here with the hills. You want to make sure you're bringing your needle almost a little bit above this stitch line. Let me come down here a little bit better. Hopefully I can zoom in on that whenever I edit this video, but you're almost going over that line as you are stitching so that you can make sure it's covered up. So those are just two quick notes I wanted to make sure I share in the beginning of the video, even though I am thinking of this now at the end of the video. Once you've gotten to what feels like a halfway point in your hill, go ahead and stop for today. I used 2 arm lengths of this color, and then finally I decided to stop just because I ran out of my second arm length and figured this could be a good spot to pick up tomorrow. But we will come back tomorrow to finish the hill and to stitch our sheep's legs. Until then, if you realize you have completely fallen in love with this grass field and loopy stitches and need yet another project for Advent, check out our 2023 Advent Stitch Along, which I'll link below. See you tomorrow.